Try this again.
Hello, everyone.
We're slow today.
It's been a long day.
We just got done doing a live, and now we're doing another one.
My
What?
knees hurt and my stomach hurts. It's gonna be a great day.
Yeah, hold on. I gotta pull up.
All right, so we can read
There
your
you go.
comments easier.
Yes.
All right.
That way we're not sitting there trying to figure out what you're saying. Oh.
Okay, so we're gonna probably mute it because I will get distracted. I am gonna be honest. I know myself 100%.
There you go. Can't totally mute it, but hey.
Okay, perfect. All right, we have one person with us. Who is
Hey, one person.
Oh, that's us.
No, that's either Angela.
No,
she's quick.
One watching. That's us.
So who's on here? Who's on here watching? She says it's us. I don't think so. Stop laughing at me. I can feel the cat.
I'm laughing at myself.
Such a dork. We're watching ourselves, folks.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are talking about Miss Katy
Hawelka.
Hawelka, yes.
So the beginning is gonna be all about Katy, her family.
Mm. Oh, and I forgot to put it. My bad. No, I forgot what it was. Oh, essay.
Yes, there will be
There will
talks
be
of essay and then a brutal assault.
Yes.
I will say that. It is brutal. And so I'm going to start on talking about who Katy is and her family, because I don't want to get started straight into the murder, because I want you to get to know who Katy is. I want you guys to be able to fully grasp who she is, so when you guys when you guys hear what was done to her, it's even more yeah, exactly, horrifying. I don't know if you can hear John, but it's even more horrifying to hear what happened to her. And also, no,
okay.
Also to see how the justice system and also other people treated Katy during this time period, because this was in the 80s.
Thanks.
This was in the 80s. So the justice system has come a long way, and actually it's partially because of Katy's family.
Okay.
So Katy, or Catherine Hawelka, was born in June 18th of 1967 in Oneida, New York. Her parents were Terry Connolly and Joseph Hawelka. Her mom worked in sales and her dad was a dentist. She was the second oldest of four, with one older sister named Betsy and one younger sister, Carrie, and one younger brother named Joe Jr. The parents divorced in 1972 when the kids were young, and the divorce was amicable. It was actually a super healthy divorce.
Oh, okay.
It was just straight up, I think this is over, I think we're done, and they just split. The kids adjusted really well to the divorce, and Joe remarried a woman named Janice, and the family blended really well, and they got along really well together too. So it wasn't like Janice was like this evil stepmom person at all. They just like got along really well together.
Kind of sounds like the beginning of the one we did last week, when the family was close knit. You know, that's not the cause.
And then so Katy was always called Katy or Kate. Her full name was Catherine, but they called her Katy or Kate. Her mom actually called her Never a Bad Day Kate.
Okay.
Because that's how happy she was. She was a happy soul and she was a happy person, and she had been that way since she was a young child.
Yeah.
So she had always been this happy person. Okay. She saw the best in everyone, and she tried to make opportunities for herself and also others.
Okay.
Many people who knew her family saw that the kids loved each other and would have had each other's backs no matter what. Like, they were a super close knit family, and those kids like had each other's backs.
Okay.
They were really a big supportive unit of each other. One story that was highlighted in this, it was Joe Jr. was swimming, and then he started to struggle swimming when he was in the pool, and all three sisters dove in to save him.
Oh, wow. So he was the only boy out of how many sisters? 3?
4.
4 sisters. Okay.
No, 3 sisters, yes.
3 sisters. Okay.
Betsy, Katy, and Carrie.
Okay.
So he was the youngest. On December 21st of 1975, are you joining us?
Coming out here. How you doing, folks? How you doing?
Well,
I'll
if
just
you're
sit
gonna
over here in the corner.
You have to be in it if you're going to sit there. No.
Oh, no snuggle corner.
Okay, so on December 21st of
I'm
1975,
feeling claustrophobic.
okay, also this is a drinking game. This is a drinking game. A non-alcoholic drinking game. You are going to drink every time Brian McCarthy tells a lie. And that means if he says this happened, then this happened, then this happened, you drink 3 times. And you will see why I say that. So on December 21st, 1975, all the kids and Joe Jr. survived, and Joe Sr. and his wife Janice at the time survived a fire when their Christmas tree lit on fire. The kids were staying with their dad, and so the tree caught on fire in the middle of the night. And the kids survived because Joe Sr. jumped 30 feet down from the roof onto the driveway. And then he had all the kids and his wife jump down into his arms where he caught them.
Did you live? Did you?
No, did you die?
Oh, did you die? Oh, did you die? Did you?
He said to them, "You don't have to worry. I'm going to get you down, and you're just going to jump in my arms, and nothing is going to happen to you guys." And every single one of them trusted him enough to jump.
Oh, okay.
Janice said no kid took a single thought about it and just did it because they trusted him so much.
Until they heard splat.
Okay.
When he jumped, he broke his right leg and
Ooh.
left ankle, but he still caught them.
Oh, okay.
The sisters helped because in the fire their brother was in a separate room. They actually went into his room and grabbed him before his mom, his dad and his stepmom could. So they grabbed their brother before anybody else did.
Okay.
So when Terry woke up, she was notified of this, and she was like, "I could have lost my whole entire family in one fell swoop." So she kind of had an existential crisis because of that.
Mm.
So Katie was close to everyone, but she and her little sister Carrie were besties. They did everything together. Carrie said her friends were so surprised they were close because they couldn't believe that Katie drove Carrie to school every day and interacted with her at school, while their siblings wouldn't even look their way.
Oh, wow.
So Katie made it a point to interact with Carrie at school.
Your claws hurt.
Eventually, Terry married a man named Martin Connolly, and
Martin Connolly.
And then Janice and Joe Sr. divorced, and then he remarried Donna. So Joe Sr. remarried somebody named Donna. Because their parents got along with everyone, and everything was smooth. Like, everyone got along really well. They were a really well-blended family. Katie was a brownie, and she was super involved in her community. They actually had a kid who was sick in their neighborhood, and they raised money for treatment for him. In 8th grade, she received a Good Citizenship Award. And then she also babysat most of the kids in her neighborhood. And everyone loved her. Like, they were like...
She was the good kid.
She was the good kid. When she was in high school, she was a cheerleader. She was on the student council.
Well, that's what caused her to go nuts.
She was on pep club. She was a student body president. She played clarinet.
The one that got murdered.
Yeah, she's the one who got murdered.
Yeah. Yeah. This is why I don't say anything until she's reading, because when she's reading, so you gotta shush.
When she was in high school, she was again a cheerleader on the student council. She was on pep club. She was on the student body president for a little bit. She played clarinet in band, and she was on the yearbook community, and she was the treasurer for her local school sorority.
Lord, how did she do all that?
I don't
know. I went out for one sport and barely lived through that.
She was also considered, like, she was basically, the like preppy girl style that's there with the polo shirts and then the skirts, and that was her style. She graduated with honors too. So she graduated top of her class, and she was accepted into her first choice school, Clarkson University, where she wanted a degree in finance or a business degree.
Clarkson?
Okay.
Katie's family was very happy that she wanted to go to Clarkson University in Potsdam, New York, because it was considered a really safe school instead of one in the city where there was a higher chance for crime.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was like in like a rural area of New York. Clarkson University actually didn't start letting women into college until 1964. It was an all-men's college. So Katy said she wanted to go there because she wanted to be a part of the movement to break down barriers there.
Okay. Good for her.
She's saying women belonged, basically saying women belong in higher education. In her first year, she made a ton of friends. She had a roommate named Nancy Parks, and they were immediately best friends and basically considered themselves sisters. Um, Nancy heard about immediately. So basically, Nancy then had to transfer out, and she moved pretty far.
Mhm.
But eventually, when she heard the news later on, it devastates her. Nancy returned. So Katy returned to Clarkson, and she was living with 3 girls in the Woodstock apartments on campus. So on her second year, that's where she was going to be living. And on August 28th, she was on campus and she went out with some friends and a roommate to a bar that they frequented called Bogies. She is 19 years old at the time. So they did have fake IDs. as you know, college kids do.
Mhm.
This college kid didn't do that.
They hung out with friends, and that night she was really close with a Todd Kilburn. He was a frat guy, and he was really sweet to her. They drank a couple of beers, and remember this because it will come back later in the most horrifying way.
Fat guys are sweet.
What's the guy's name again?
Todd Kilburn.
Todd Kilburn. Okay.
They
Listen to
left.
that last name, Kilburn.
They left the bar. You're gonna regret saying that. Kilburn is one of the sweetest people in this story.
I'm gonna regret saying that. I apologize.
They left the bar at like 2:30, and both of them, Kilburn and Katy, walked the mile back to campus. And he was insistent that he walk her back to her apartment like a gentleman.
He
Okay.
was a gentleman if you walked her all that way.
They started to walk, and then they had to stop because he needed to pee. And
Why did we bring that up?
and potentially during the summer she hurt her foot, so she was just getting over that, so she needed to take frequent stops to rest her foot.
Okay.
So he decided to pee by a gate by the KFC by campus.
What is
In
the
the bushes.
significance of this?
You will see the
We will
significance.
see.
Now, Kilburn said at this time he noticed another guy doing the same thing as him, just a little further away, and he thought nothing of it.
Let's go pee by the KFC.
There was a gate that actually led to a shortcut through the campus, which is really close to the locker arena, which will come in handy. Kilburn was going to walk with her, and Katy said, "No, you've already walked really out of your way to go back to, walked out of your way. Just go back to the frat house. I'm fine to walk the rest of the way." She was like, "I feel bad." She's like, "I'm on campus. I'm fine. Remember, this was supposed to be a safe campus."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you're right. It is a safe campus."
Now, how would you come about saying any campus is a safe campus?
This,
I mean, if I'm a random
this
nut
isn't.
job, I'd pick wherever I want to go and take care of it.
This is the 80s, so the same things hadn't been put into place. So
True,
it was very much
80s.
Yeah. He said, "You're right." And then he left her, and he said, she was good. She was not drunk. He said she was fine to walk by herself, and that if she was not, then he wouldn't have let her. Then he wouldn't have let her walk by herself, and he would have walked her the rest of the way. He said it was an hour since her last drink, and she wasn't slurring her words. And that will lead us to actually the terrible events that occur. So those are the last things that are said and seen
Quit spitting on the thing,
of her
Michelle.
before we get to Brian McCarthy.
Okay.
So the murder. So we're going to do the closest thing to witness because you cannot trust this man with an inch of your life. Brian McCarthy is a liar, and I will tell you that straight off the
You
bat.
don't have to get so close.
Yeah, McCarthy.
On August 28th, like I said, 1986 was
Is
when
he
this.
related to Jenny McCarthy and the McCarthy family?
No, not that I know of.
I'm glad because they're incredible people.
When this crime occurred, 31-year-old Kim Avedikian was a security guard for the university.
So what was his last name?
Kim Avedikian.
Say that 3 times fast.
And I will preface this by saying he had no official training. None of the security guards on that campus.
You keep getting kicked. Why do you keep getting kicked? You shouldn't be. Is that why it shows one person watching us right now? You must have been the second person. I wonder why it was kicking you.
I'm sorry. That kicked you?
A security guard. So none of the security guards had any training. They received no training from the university.
Mm-hmm.
They were not like trained security guards. They were essentially night watchmen.
Okay.
Did they have guns?
No.
Oh man, that sucks.
He was working the overnight shift and he was in the locker arena where the university was storing their computers. Now, remember, this is the 80s. Computers are a big deal.
Hair metal was too.
He said he was just inside making sure no one was going to steal them,
Oh, okay.
especially because of the time.
She said she's going to have to watch the replay because her internet signal is being stupid today.
Okay. Steal them, especially because of the time of the day. He was one of two security guards. It was a smaller school at the time. It was a technical college. So they did not employ a bunch of people. Now, Clarkson University has about 4,000 students in 2004. I think it's actually 40,000 students in 2004. They have quite a bit amount of students. Oh, I can't talk.
Clarkson.
So remember, Todd Kilburn last saw her at 2:20.
Okay.
Around 3:25 on August 29th, he started to hear what he thought was banging on the doors to the arena, and he contacted the other security guard, Donald Shanti, to let him know what he was hearing, saying, "Can you come this way? Someone might be trying to get in."
Right, I agree with that. Angela said this is why girls go to the bathroom and everywhere together.
Yeah.
Buddy system.
Shanti said that he was headed that way.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Isn't there a thing that you can give, like, if you're at a bar, you can give a code to the bartender that you're in trouble?
Yeah.
I know there's some. I don't know what.
Yeah,
it
there is.
is.
There's the
It's
angel
like a
shot.
certain drink.
Yeah,
That's what she said.
the angel shot. And
Oh,
then
okay.
if depending on the liquor you put on top of it, really, Marie, depending the liquor you put with it depends on if you just kick them out, call the police, or something like that.
And
Oh,
then not only
okay.
that, they have fingernail polish too.
Remember that, ladies, because that's important. Because there's nut jobs out there.
Yeah,
They also have fingernail
and
polish
you will
too,
see
though,
Brian McCarthy is one of those nut jobs.
Yeah.
If you can't tell, I hate him.
Hates you.
So
I'm not scooting closer. Hater.
So Shanti said sure, and they were headed over that way. So he goes over there, and he saw one thing next to the arena, and he said it was a couple that appeared to be having sex next to the arena, on the grass, next to the back parking lot.
Oh.
Shanti said that this guy had dark hair, and he looked up and he made eye contact with Shanti while he was driving into the parking lot. He looked away and continued doing what he was doing. They could see the back of the man, and he was holding her leg up, and that's all they were able to see.
But the woman wasn't screaming or anything like that?
They didn't hear any of that.
Thank God.
Oh,
well, I don't know if it's thank God, because what if he was hurting her?
Well, and then that's what we're gonna get to.
Because isn't that the killer?
We will get to that.
Okay.
They could see the back. So they thought two kids were just getting freaky. And they thought no one would be around. Shanti was like, "WTF?" And he said that he experienced this actually on multiple occasions, and he was like, "Damn, this is embarrassing."
And this is a clean school. Yeah.
He was like, "This is really embarrassing." All of it in general, walking up to them, telling them to leave. He was thinking something he would have to do again. He thought maybe because he had shown a light on them that they would get up and run away and he wouldn't have to deal with it. So he walked up to the front doors and he talked to Avedikian, and he told them what he saw and what was happening. So Avedikian leaves the locker arena and they drive back to where they saw the couple, hoping they had left. But when they got there, the guy was acting weird. He was crouching, trying not to be seen. So they drove away again.
Crouching tiger, hidden dragon.
In police reports and other times, they have been asked if they thought it was consensual and they wanted to just avoid. They said they thought it was consensual and they wanted to avoid whatever weird interaction they were going to have.
So no one checked on this poor girl.
Yet.
We're getting there.
Yet. Sadly, I will say there is a debate on whether stopping them or going up to them earlier could have saved a life. And we will never know, mainly because the killer is a liar. So it's possible the first time they saw him, the damage was already done.
That's so sad.
Alan H. Clark, the president of the university at the time, said they were night watchmen. They weren't charged with public morality. And another thing is...
So it's okay to have sex on campus. I mean, I'm sorry, but if I'm a security, I'd walk up and say, "Guys, really? You can't get a room or go somewhere?"
Well, here's another thing. They were only given two-way radios, so they could only contact each other. So if the guards needed to contact the police, they needed to find a phone to call them.
So like the emergency phones now that they have in place on campus, in
didn't
case you
exist.
need them. They didn't have
look
those.
look at how media's come now. A cell phone, you can literally record everything.
The president said they were checking the noise because they thought they were going to be stopping a burglary in process. They did not think they were going to be dealing with anything else.
Wow.
That's all they thought they were going to be dealing with. So the university spokesman said later that the guards had no way of knowing they were stumbling on the worst crime the university in its 93-year history. The police chief, Clinton Maytalk, he's very important to this case. He agreed that they were not intentionally ignoring an assault that was happening because they just didn't know it was happening. He said it was a casual response to two kids being out in the open like that, but they weren't trained.
Because he was having his coffee in contemplation.
So they left again and discussed if they should call the police, and they were like, we don't want to call for this because they were told to only call for emergencies, and they weren't thinking this was an emergency.
How do you figure that that's not an emergency? Okay, now we're stopping.
So basically, I'm telling you, they didn't know this assault was taking place at this time. So this is back
because
when
they didn't check. It's semi their fault. I mean, no, it's not their fault that this poor woman died.
But
if you're security and you're walking around a campus and you're seeing two kids humping on the ground, you might want to go check on it.
But that's what you think is happening. You don't.
Then you'd still go check on it.
Because, well, at the time, it's an SA. It was an SA instead of just them having sex.
Well, so
SA.
they
What is
didn't.
SA?
So we have to we have to do a disclaimer because of the sexual assault that's in the story.
Yeah,
it might trigger people. So whoever's coming in to watch, just so you have a heads up. There is, I guess,
certain
from the story
exactly. So
that's going on in this.
So basically, I gave you a little heads up. So there was an assault. So the first thing they see is two kids having sex, and they're like, okay, this is embarrassing. I don't want to deal with this. I've dealt with it too much already. They drove away. They come back. He's now acting suspicious, and they're like, maybe he's trying to get away. You know what? We're gonna leave again, and we're gonna see if it's an emergency.
So you just said security has dealt with this a lot?
Yes, one of the guards said that they have had this happen repeatedly, that they have had to break it up before.
Again, why is security not?
Because
if it's happening that much, you would think something would happen. They'd be expelled from school. Or
the only reason they were there, the security was there, is they weren't even security. They were there just to make sure the computers didn't get stolen. So
you are correct, Angela. Yes, you would want to break it up, not just keep walking.
Yeah. So because they were told to call for emergencies and they weren't thinking this is emergency. So they go back one more time to shine their lights on them. And if they don't call, if they don't stop, then they are going to call the police. They're like 3 times is a charm. So they drive over and the man is gone and they went, oh, thank God. We don't have to stop anything. We don't have to break him up. And then they look over and the girl is still there. So they go up to the girl. And she was lying still and she was partially nude. When they got closer, they realized her head was in a pool of blood. And those guards started panicking.
No shit, I would too.
And they sprang into action. Avedikian ran to get a phone and to call the police because again they had to find a phone. Because
good for him. At least he reacted quickly.
And Shanti ran to the woman to help her.
Wow.
In the police report, Shanti said the woman was having a hard time breathing. She was on her back and her airway was probably filled with blood. He said he tried to help her by moving her head to the side to clear the blood from her mouth to help her breathe easier.
Sounds like he has some medical experience.
Because she was gurgling and struggling to breathe. He was really worried about her because of all the blood and the struggling to breathe. The police report said that when the police arrived, Shanti was still holding her head, trying to comfort her.
What a good guy. Salute to you, dude.
Yeah. So when the police got there, they looked at the wall because she was laying on the grass here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was like a wall immediately behind her.
Yeah.
So of course you're going to look at the wall. You're going to make sure there's nothing on the wall, right? There was blood as high as 7 feet on the wall.
He was hitting her with something.
Jeez.
We will come to that. Immediately they theorized her head had been smashed on the wall a couple of times, and that is what caused it.
Oh, hence why it was up so high.
So now while Avedikian was on the way back from calling the police, he noticed a man with dark hair balled under the stairwell about 50 feet from the victim, and he was hiding underneath the stairwell.
Oh wow.
He didn't know if it was someone who was hiding or if he was hurt, so he notified the police about the guy immediately. So some officers went to the victim while the others went to the guy under the stairs. Officer John Kaplan, Dale Culver, David Bartlett, and Sergeant James Lewis were the first ones on the scene, and they dragged the man out from under the stairway. The man was fully functioning, he was unhurt, and he was aware of everything that was going on. He had dark hair and a scruffy beard, and he had blood on his shirt. He was overly whining about his back hurting. Like when they tried to move him, he would be like, "Oh, my back is really hurting. Please stop."
Can you do that one more time so the viewers can see that?
No. No.
So they found an ID on him, and they said it said he was Brian McCarthy, and he was 23 years old. So as they tried to question him and ask why he was so close to a woman who was severely beaten, he kept asking, "How's the girl?" And it was coming off, and it was coming off like he was taunting them. There was like no real concern in his voice or actions. It was a, "How's the girl?"
They should take these type of people and
No, we'll get to what his.
let certain people do the same thing they did to that person. Oh no, that would never happen.
He claims,
Okay.
so as they're pulling him away, he claimed that he heard her screaming and he came to save her. But her attacker, who was a man in a black jacket, kicked him in the back and he passed out.
He's a ninja.
Oh. Okay, that's a hint.
It begins. Also, I forgot to drink from when he said his back was hurting.
Oh.
God dang it.
Had kicked him in the back and he passed out.
You said it again. My bladder's going to be great today.
He had problems telling officers where the kick happened to him. He said it was his lower back, then he changed it to his upper back, and then he even at one point said it was his head. So drink to all three. Now, when the police were looking at the victim, they actually realized that she was blonde, but most of her hair was covered in blood, giving it a reddish tint. And her face was bruised and swollen beyond recognition. And her clothes had been ripped and torn, and she was only wearing a sweater and a button-up shirt that had been pulled up to expose more of herself. As emergency personnel showed up, she actually coded and was brought back.
So she was brought back to life?
Yeah.
Oh, poor thing.
Then she was in
I'm glad she was brought back to life.
When she was in the hospital, she was identified as 19-year-old Katy or Catherine Hawelka.
19 years old.
Yeah.
Ladies, please, if you go anywhere, have someone with you.
Her mom had she actually had been dropped off the day before her second year at Clarkson. So she had been dropped off on the 27th. Her mom has woken up before dawn with a police officer telling her that her daughter had been attacked on campus and it was at the hospital. So after the parents were called, Terry immediately called Joe and everybody, and the parents all got together and went to the hospital. They left Betsy at home to take care of the younger siblings because the parents didn't know what they were going to see.
God, and how that must be as a parent to walk in and see your daughter, son, whoever, so badly.
I'm gonna tell you something that hurts the soul.
Oh my God.
So they went to the house of the Good Samaritan Hospital in Watertown, New York, and this is how bad the wounds on Katy were. Katy was wheeled by her family in the ICU, and they saw her, but they did not recognize her at all. They thought it was someone else who had been in a car accident or something. In the book, A Stranger Killed Katy, Terry, her mom, said that she knew it was Katy in her heart. And she said, "That's Katy." But everyone else said, "No, don't say that. That can't be Katy." So she was put in the ICU and put on life support. And the doctor said that if she recovered, there would be brain damage, but they were unsure if she would even survive.
Yeah.
So now, at this time, there were reports that on the night of August 28th, Robert Warren Jr. had picked up a hitchhiker on Route 11 headed to Morristown, New York. And the hitchhiker, he said, reeked of alcohol. He appeared to be in his early to mid-20s. He had dark hair and a scruffy beard. Do you remember that description from before?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't.
It was Brian. He told him his name was Brian.
Mm-hmm.
And he had asked him to give him a right to Potsdam, and Warren agreed. He said that he just babbled about everything, and that he even said he was related to the Snell family, which is a wealthy and well-known family in the area. And Warren was just trying to get him to his destination. He didn't really want to talk to him at all. He seemed like he was wired, but not in a threatening way. Like he just wanted him out of his vehicle.
You could tell Michelle's very interested in her finger right there. Sorry about that.
Can you?
But he also didn't want to like say get out of my car. He was like, he's wired and I'm gonna take him to his destination, but I'm not gonna make him stop. Like I want him out of my car, but I'm not gonna make him get out of my car.
So he had an uncomfortable feeling about the dude the whole time in his car.
Yeah.
Okay.
He couldn't just he seemed like he was on something. Brian said that he was telling Warren.
Well, he was, didn't he say when he got in he reeked of alcohol?
Yeah.
So
Brian,
right there, strike one.
Brian was telling Warren, it's crazy. I got in a pretty violent confrontation earlier today. So they have Brian in custody. This is just something that happened earlier in the night.
Okay.
Before Katie's attack.
So we should say flashback.
Flashback. This is before Katie's attack. He goes, it's crazy. I got into a pretty violent confrontation earlier today at the Chateau Bar in Winthrop. He said the guy accused him of stealing $3. Brian then said he got into a fight and shot that guy in the leg and he fled. And he said that he planned to make sure the guy was dead by 4 a.m. Brian then said, I have a gun, want to see it? And Warren said, no, thank you, I'm good. I don't want to see your gun.
You want to see my pretty gun?
He dropped him off in the downtown area of Pottsdale about 10:30ish, and immediately after dropping him off, he went straight to the police. He said he was worried that the guy was dangerous, and he wasn't sure if he had actually shot someone, but he just thought the guy was a danger to society. He filled out a
thought right.
He filled out a description and said he was wearing a silver watch and a silver stretch band. Now, if that seemed kind of familiar, that was Brian, the guy they found under the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go a little bit into who Brian is.
Okay.
Brian McCarthy was born in Meriden, Connecticut. He was the oldest of 6 siblings, and they were related to the Snell family. His mom was Florence Snell, and his dad was Milton McCarthy. And his mom was actually working at Clarkson University at the time of the murder.
Okay.
As a child, he was described as a Dennis the Menace type of child. He was mischievous, and it was never like bad, but it was annoying. Okay. When he reached his teen years, he started to change, and he actually started to turn into a bad kid. He was doing drugs and drinking. He was hanging out with bad crowds. He was just going down a really bad path. He was actually kicked out of his home because he was so out of control. Before he finished high school, he quit school. And before he graduated, and there doesn't seem to be any explanation why he left, why any of this happened, why his behavior changed so rapidly.
Okay.
There's no explanation because his siblings turned out to be super normal.
I say that stuff like that, it's something in your brain.
Yeah, he was
chemicals wrong.
A chemical imbalance.
Wrong, yeah, chemical imbalance or wrong gene hookup, whatever. Because you notice that a lot of these serial killers, to kill a human being is it's something people can't
Use your words.
do. Well, they can't do. I mean, yeah, if you're in the military and you're fighting and you have to because you're saving your life or saving others, that's a big difference than if you're going out and picking somebody and going, "Oh, I'm gonna murder this person." I mean, these people are chemically imbalanced and sick. Something clicked wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry.
So
I'm not a doctor, so I can't say that that's what it is. But
so Brian was just a really angry kid. His family was able to keep him safe and prevent him from being in the media or put in jail when he was under 18. But when he became an adult, there was no way for them to do that. When he was 18, he was charged with larceny and fleeing from the police. He was then again charged with larceny again in the third degree burglary, forgery several times, and a lot of drug possession charges. So
And you
those
say the parents got him out of a lot of these?
in his before he was 18.
See, and that's where, just me personally as a parent, my kids did that. I'd want them to stay in jail so they learned a lesson.
Yeah.
Let them learn the hard way, because if you sit there and go, oh, I forgive you for punching the shit out of that guy, what are you teaching them other than, hey, I can get away with that?
Well, it's going to get a lot worse. When he was 20, he started a relationship with a 16-year-old, and he did this while he was in upstate New York. He almost killed her brother when he stood up to him, saying, "Leave my sister alone. You're a predator," essentially.
Not
And
essentially, he was.
and Brian beat him to a pulp. He actually broke his jaw.
Wow.
So after that, he took her to Potsdam, and his parents wouldn't let them stay with them because also that classified as kidnapping. She's a minor.
Yeah.
They ended up staying with friends, and he would make her burglarize places with him, like a church, just to get money for food and drugs. He was arrested for this stuff, and then that's when things fell apart for them. Because when he was arrested, she was also arrested, and she broke down saying, "I just want to go back and be with my family."
This is the young girl.
This is a 16-year-old.
Man, I hope they got her back.
Her parents actually bought both of them tickets to Virginia, but they said he wasn't welcome to stay with them. They were just kind of giving him a way out.
Then why would they even buy him a ticket?
They were giving him a way out. He just bailed on her instead of taking that bus ticket. But that was because in 1985 he was arrested for trying to steal a car, and he went to jail. He went to prison, and he was let out on early parole in Virginia. He got caught on larceny and spent 60 days in jail in New York. Now, if you remember Richard Dominique's case, we saw how difficult it was for jurisdictions in the same state to communicate.
Yep.
That same communication is not existent for across state lines. Because if New York had told Virginia that he had been arrested and put in jail for larceny, he would have been put back in jail.
This is why our government should raise more money for law enforcement, firefighters, ambulance drivers. They are not getting what they need.
There needs to be, and there's been debate about building a computer system that basically connects everything together, so having jurisdictions talk to each other.
Yeah.
The problem with this is, and I hate to say this because California actually implemented a bunch of laws about this with jurisdictions, a lot of them don't want to.
That's crazy.
That's because they don't want to transfer that information because it's theirs, and they don't want anybody else to touch it. It's a weirdly possessive thing. It's like, you know how in like all those crime shows you see the police are like, "Oh, the feds are here." Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. They don't like people touching their stuff.
Because then they get credit for it. But the thing is we're talking about people's lives here.
Mhm.
And we are talking about, if I can catch a Jack the Ripper, or hey, you know what, I don't want to give that information, so Jack the Ripper goes on and continues to kill.
Yeah.
What's more important?
And that's the thing. There's been a lot of talk about that. There's been a lot of things. So, let me go back to where I was.
Michelle,
So,
how you really feel.
how they didn't see the escalation.
Can't get a word in edgewise.
How they didn't see the escalation in his actions is beyond me. Because he started with larceny and forgery, and then burglary, and then he beat someone up, then he kidnapped a girl and forced her to commit crimes with him. So there's obviously an escalation in his behavior, and everyone's just like,
now,
okay.
When you say forced to commit crimes with him, she was scared to death. That's probably why she did it.
Probably because he was also hitting her. He was on drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Terrifying. And if he had been arrested for breaking parole, he wouldn't have been out, and Katy Hawelka wouldn't be where she is. 1 month before Katy's attack, he actually got into a fight with Leonard F. Page, a 35-year-old insurance agent at a bar. They ended up bringing the fight to an alley, and McCarthy beat him so bad he almost killed him.
McCarthy must have been a pretty good fighter, from what I'm getting.
The guy never pressed charges for the attack that night. Nobody knows why he didn't press charges, but he never pressed charges.
Probably scared shitless of him.
So we're going back to the night in question. Get ready to get your drinks, guys. Get your drink.
It's right there.
Okay. So, 7 hours after Katie's attack, Brian McCarthy was questioned by police. They did try to verify if he had shot someone in the leg before the attack, but either the person never came forward or it never happened, and most likely it never happened. He had just lied about it.
Drink.
He was interviewed by Police Chief Maytok and Lieutenant Terry McKendy.
So the names for these people are
Yeah.
like awesome.
He immediately said he would talk because he had nothing to hide. He said that when Katy was attacked, he was peeing by the fence by the locker arena. He said he was walking by and he heard some screams again and again, and then the person yelled something, but he couldn't hear what it was. So he burst into actions and ran to the screaming without any thought of his own safety. He just wanted to help the person screaming. He said, "I didn't see her, but I heard her. I was just trying to help her." He said
I'm a
he's
superhero.
That's what's running in my head right now.
Superhero.
I'm all like,
And
that's
comic book and I didn't beat the living crap out of her because I'm a superhero.
That's what I'm laughing at. I'm not laughing at what's going on. I'm laughing at the fact that I'm picturing this, and he's all like, "I sprang into action." What
I
action did
leaped
you
from
spring
a
in?
tall building.
That's what it's in my head. That's all
it's
I'm
gonna
seeing.
get worse.
I'm like pictured all this. I'm like, he looks like a cartoon character.
He goes, he said, I ran by some steps. No, wait. I went into where the building dips. So he's changing his story mid-sentence. Like he's going back and forth. Chief Maytok said, "I just let him go on because he was just incriminating himself." I just let him talk.
Sounds like it.
He was impaired at he looked like he was impaired at the time of questioning.
So he was like, I came as a
Well,
superhero
He
to save the girl.
he basically was like he acted impaired. It wasn't so much he was slurring his words, but just how he was acting and talking.
His
Kind
demeanor.
of the same way the hitchhiker said he was wired,
Mm.
but he wasn't necessarily
he must
drunk.
feed off of it. It must
It-
give
it
him
must-
like
Get some attention.
Yeah.
an
So
adrenaline rush or something.
he said he walked by the dip and there was nothing there, and then he walked out to the road and nothing, and then he walked by the steps and he turned around and looked back, and then that's all I remember. They asked, "Well, did you see the girl?" He said, "Nope, I didn't see her." And they went, "That's weird. Why did you immediately ask how the girl was?" And he said, "No."
Bing.
He goes, "No, wait, I did see someone, and I saw some guy in a black jacket." And then he gets real detailed. He's like, "I saw a guy with a black jacket, and on the cuffs of the jacket there were white streaks, but I couldn't tell who was wearing the jacket." He
Did
said,
they ask what this person in the jacket looked like? Was he white?
She's
Was
getting
he...
there.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
But he couldn't tell who was wearing the jacket. He said he didn't know if it was a guy or the girl who was wearing the jacket. And the police went, "I thought you didn't see a girl." He said, "No, I did, because remember I asked how she was."
Well, we got him there, didn't
Wow. This is some
Little
dumbassery right here.
The police are like, "Okay," because he seemed to be breaking because his story kept changing. He then said, I was walking around the corner. I don't know. I just went out and I saw stars and I could taste the grass. I got hit. I got
You
hit."
could taste the grass? Oh,
Are you eating it like a goat?
somebody hit me. That's when I taste the grass.
I got
It
hit.
tastes grassy.
I got hit. I know I got hit. And the police said, "Well, where'd you get hit?" And he goes, "On my neck, on my shoulders, on my back. I don't know. It hurts all down my back, between my shoulder blades. It all hurts."
Man, he's adding on a lot.
He is just that. You ain't drinking.
He did get x-rays and there
Oh.
was nothing wrong. There was nothing wrong with him. They gave him x-rays too. Maytok just let him keep talking because he was incriminating himself, and this was definition on incrimination. It was the whole interview. Like when they do what's incrimination, they play this interview.
Okay. I mean, because he's doing pretty good at it. I mean, he was a superhero in the beginning.
But I didn't see anybody.
I didn't see no one.
Then I saw
But I seen a guy in a
girl.
black jacket and it had white stuff on
But
the
I don't know if it was the
sleeves.
guy or the girl wearing the jacket. I thought you didn't see a girl. No, I did, because remember
Maybe
I
it
asked
was
you.
Batman.
You know, remember I asked you how she was doing.
Well, he then said the last thing he remembered was the police pulling him out from under the stairs that he was hiding under. And he said he heard a bunch of radios and when he was pulled out from under the stairs. And then he was thrown into an ambulance, strapped to a gurney, and police started asking him questions. And then Officer Peretta told him he was being charged with assault or something. And you're telling me I'm being charged with rape. There was never any mention of that at all prior to this. They had never once mentioned sexual assault at all.
So what would you call it if you come across a body that's literally had the life beaten out of it? Clothes are unbuttoned or possibly missing, and they don't call it rape?
It would be sexual. assault.
Well, yeah, we would.
Same thing as that,
But they had never told him that, and he's saying,
him that.
yeah,
Oh,
they never told him that.
okay.
They never said anything like that to him.
He's adding it in himself.
Yeah,
So he's adding more
charges.
Being stupid.
They never really originally charged him on that, and they were never questioned. And this was because she was unconscious, and they can't really charge somebody for sexual assault unless like they have a kit done, a test. Maytalk's ears perked up, and he said he let it run. He didn't correct him, and he insisted. And then Brian said he insisted he didn't see any girls, but he actually saw a couple of girls walking, and he asked how the girl was. I heard it's pretty bad.
Jeez.
So he said he saw no girls. Then he saw a couple of girls. And then he said, how's the girl? I heard it's pretty bad.
You think?
Make up your mind, ding dong.
He said he was staying in Madrick, which is a couple of towns down. He said he had gotten into an altercation in Winthrop with a guy after he accused him of stealing $3. The first time he told the truth. He said he had hitchhiked to the college. He said he had at least 3 6-packs that night, so 18 beers, which is a lot.
I know a lot of people though that can down 18 beers and be standing there like nothing happened. And I won't mention those people, but whew, okay, good.
He just kept insisting he never saw a girl and that he got hit. And the police said, you have no marks on you and no evidence to prove he got hit.
So now he's back to never saw a girl.
Never happened.
Never happened.
And he got hit on his back.
Ooh.
But he did have a bruised right hand and what appeared to be a broken finger on that hand. And he was trying to hide it the whole entire time. They were interviewing him. And when the police chief said, hey, can I see that hand? He said, I'm not going to let you see it. And when Maytalk said, well, how'd you get it? He goes, oh, yeah, I tore my friend's door down last night.
Well, that's important.
Police were sent to his friend's house to check his story, and there was no door damaged.
What?
Liar. Yeah, drink.
Oh.
In the end of the interview, he said, I know if I did it, I would admit to doing it. But because I didn't do it, I'm not going to admit to doing it, which is all I could say.
All he can say.
No, you had a lot to say just a little bit ago. I didn't see nobody. Oh, wait, I seen 2 girls walking by. Wait a minute, I seen a dark hair person in a black jacket with, like, I could see their cuffs on their jacket and they had white stuff on it. I heard radios as people were coming up to me. Oh, but you didn't have nothing to say?
And how's the girl?
Okay.
And just the fact that he's like, I know if I did it, I would admit to doing it. But because I didn't do it, I'm not going to admit to doing it, which is all I could say. So he's like, if I knew if I did it, I would admit to doing it.
Yeah, I would hide under stairs.
He would take ownership of it.
And after that, Maytalk stood up and said, McCarthy, you are under arrest for assault and rape, and he walked away.
Good for him. I'll be right back, folks.
At this point, Brian McCarthy was arrested and was just lying through his teeth. And Katy was in a hospital bed.
Oh.
So there was actually a family friend of the McCarthys that was a senior investigator in the New York State Police Bureau of Investigations. And apparently it was like a thing. They were family friends. And his name was Lawrence Maynor.
Maynard. No, I like the
So
name.
he knew Brian's parent and he knew Brian as a kid, so he knew exactly who he was.
Okay.
And he knew it would be up to him to get him to confess. So he thought that having a friendly face would get him to confess to his crimes. So that afternoon, after they had been interviewing Brian all morning, they gave him a break to get him to stop and think. After letting him have that time of reflection, they let Maynard go in, and he asked to be left alone with Brian.
Okay.
He asked to go talk to him in the office, not the interrogation room where there's like the double-sided mirror.
Yeah.
So he was like, "Can we go talk in the office and
That's gonna
not?"
make it more comfortable to where.
Or also potentially, can I beat the crap out of him?
Yeah.
So they asked if Brian was okay with this, and if it's okay if he talks with you in the office and not in the room with two-way glass, and Brian said yes. So into the room Brian and Maynard go. And about 10 minutes later, Maynard comes out and says he would like to change his original statement. They went in and said, "If you're ready to tell us, go ahead and tell us." And he said, "Yes, I'm ready to tell you the truth." Which you can make your own assumptions on when I tell you what he says. The first part of the story was the same. He was near campus when he was peeing near the gate. He saw a guy and a girl sitting in the grass talking and laughing. And he said he got close to them and then he just sat and watched them while he was sitting on a rock.
Okay.
He said he saw them get up and walk and he followed them. And he said they said a friendly goodbyes and he said there was even a "see you later" shouted across the way. So that's obviously Todd Kilburn and Katy saying goodbye.
Yeah.
He followed her through the gate far enough that she couldn't see him or get suspicious someone was following her.
Okay.
He then said that when he was following her, he seemed to have lost her.
I think so. I mean, you just have to. Is that the bread that was on top of the box? Still be good. Can you put the pasta away? That's in the pot. I made that earlier. Please. Thank you.
He said that when he was following her, he seems to have lost her. And then he walked by her and was scared because she was squatting down, peeing in the bushes. And she said, "Oh, sorry." And he said, "Oh, sorry." And she said, "Oh, that's okay." And then he said she was already bleeding when he was scared by her. She was already bleeding from her head.
Okay.
Which doesn't make any sense at all because he said when all this happened, after all that happened, so after he said, "Oh, sorry," and she says, "Oh, it's okay." He went over and he pushed her into the wall, and then he said, "I don't know how to say it. I I tried to take advantage of her. I couldn't. I went nuts. I went crazy." So now remember there was blood 7 foot high in the wall. So it couldn't have just been a simple push. It would have had to been like a hard push.
Well, yeah.
And she was also unrecognizable to her own family. He also couldn't even say what he was planning on doing to her.
The lunch meat. What's the date on it?
He couldn't even say what he was going to do to her. Because there was obviously something worse than him beating her so badly. So back to the interview. He said that he was going crazy. When he was going crazy, a car drove in, went away, came back, and repeated what the security guards had essentially said, that they had come back, left, come back, left.
Okay.
The police chief said, "Hold on, what did you actually do to her?" He said that when he found her, she didn't see him, and that she was holding on to the wall, and she must have been drunk. She was staggering.
Oh.
Remember, Kilburn said she was not drunk, and he wouldn't have let her walk home if she was.
Okay. I remember that. Yeah.
So I shoved her into the wall, shoved her hard into the wall with her face once. He then reiterates what he said before. He shoved her into the wall once with her face and tried to essay her, but then he said he never kicked or hit her at all, not once. Then all of a sudden, she was bleeding from her face. He actually said, "I looked at her face and I said, I don't know, I didn't do that. I didn't beat your face like that."
No.
He then said she had been hit repeatedly before I saw her there. Yes, I tried to take advantage of her, but someone started to do the same thing I was going to, but I just got caught. So he was saying somebody else had beat her up and done this terrible stuff, and that person had essayed her, and he was going to essay her, but he couldn't,
Somebody
and he
beat him
got
to it.
caught. Yeah,
But the only other person she was with was her friend.
and her friends.
Yeah.
Also, based off the timeline, because the last time he saw her was 2:20, and by 3:20, somebody had gone outside and was looking outside. So there is something wrong with this. There's no way that could have happened.
There's like a time lapse there or something missing from
Yeah.
that puzzle piece.
Well,
Then
not just that. The sick psycho sits there and goes, "Oh well, I found her half beaten and raped, and so I thought I'd take my turn."
exactly.
Whatever.
Then he started talking about Kilburn, saying they left each other, and he was screaming at her, and then he screamed something at her and he left her. When police confronted him and said, "But you just said they left on good terms," he said, "No, I didn't. I said he left mad." No, he didn't.
No, he did not.
Um, they just let that go and kept asking about the attack specifically. How many times he slammed her head into the wall, because he just kept saying once. He said, "Well, once really hard, and then the other time I didn't mean to. I was trying to get her out of the corner and help her, and I dropped her, and her face and head hit the wall real hard." He then said, "I kicked her once." And then he went, "I kicked her by accident." Then he
How do you
admitted
kick somebody by accident?
Thank you.
exactly
You can't kick someone by accident. Oh, my foot slipped.
And then he admitted to taking off her clothes. He
Idiot.
then admitted right after that he ran up behind her with all the force he had and rammed her into the wall.
How heavy was he?
He
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how heavy he was. He
There's a
followed.
grown man slamming a woman into the wall right there.
Yeah. He followed that up by saying, "I never punched her or hit her with my hand," which was immediately followed up with, "I hit her in the midsection with my hands, and her head snapped back and she hit her head on the wall." When they tried to get him to admit to kicking her, he then said, "No, I didn't. I was rolling her and pushing her, and I was really mad. I was like picking her up and throwing her, and I was using every bit of strength I had to move her, to shake her insides out."
Okay.
Yeah, shake her insides out.
She's not a dang pinata.
That's so sad.
He then said,
That poor girl, what she must have felt
well,
going through such a traumatic
oh,
thing and being so scared and being under the influence, if she was of alcohol, not being able to defend herself.
we're going to get to that, because you think this is terrible. This is disgusting. The lawyers in this case, even more disgusting. They're the monsters as well in this story.
We're not saying all lawyers are,
But these specific ones, and you'll see why. He said he hid under the stairs because I just essayed a girl, and then he backed up, and then he said, "Well, I tried to essay her." He tried to say it didn't matter what I did because someone else had done it before him. He then tried to find out. Then we find out Kilburn had a black jacket on. So after saying this, he then had the gall. So basically, he was saying Kilburn was the one who had done all of this before him.
Okay.
And where did this Kilburn?
He went back to the frat house.
This
He was already, yeah, he had an alibi. He was already gone.
He was the one that was walking her back to her room.
Oh, okay.
If she was going to be drunk.
Yeah, because
Nice guy.
yeah, because he sat there and he watched them. So after all of that, he then had the gall to ask how she was doing and asked to be updated on her condition.
No, you don't deserve that. You don't deserve crap.
Okay, so Katie's family, while all of this was happening, didn't give in and they didn't hide. They fought. Katie's sister
Good for them.
Betsy was home with Carrie and Joe Jr. They were teenagers at the time, so they could be left alone. And she couldn't sit and not know any longer what was happening. She wanted to know what was going on with her sister. So she left her siblings at home. She drove to the campus to see what was going on. She went to her apartment and interrogated her roommates, and they told her the story. They were at Bogey's and she was with friends, and that Kilburn had walked her home. So she then tracked Kilburn down on campus and
Jeez.
questioned him.
That's what we call a pissed off sister.
And she even went to the crime scene to investigate for herself.
Good for her.
On August 31st at 3 p.m., Terry and Joe Sr. were told that unfortunately Carrie was brain dead, and they needed to sign the paperwork to remove the ventilator, keeping her clinically alive. There was actually a bunch of legal stuff, because if they pulled the plug, the defense could argue that their client didn't kill her, but the hospital did when they pulled the plug. So they had to have an airtight case saying she was dead before the plug was pulled. And his lawyers did end up using this defense. That it,
Those lawyers are pieces of shit.
um,
At the highest level, like here's shit, they're below it.
like I said, the monsters are not just Brian.
Come on. Think about the family and what they're going through. Their daughter's brain dead, and you're going to be like, well, I think we're going to try to blame the hospital.
Yeah. So it wasn't until September 1st when they pulled the plug, and the plug was finally able to be pulled. And her whole family was around her when they did it. Luckily, I'm going to say luckily, she died 20 minutes after she was removed from life support. So that just goes to show.
Taken to heaven, and Jesus was like, I'm so sorry.
That just goes to show the extent of her injuries.
Yeah.
That she could not last that long. And the reason I say luckily is because sometimes it takes days. Because sometimes our bodies just go through the motions.
Mm-hmm.
Fight to stay alive.
And it's not even a fight. It's just the brain has stopped functioning, so the body's like, heart's pumping. Okay, we're just going to continue doing what we're supposed to do. I don't know why the brain's not telling us more information.
Mm.
But she did die 20 minutes after they had pulled the plug. So Terry's neighbor said on the first day when they were originally called to the hospital that she had told Terry that it was going to be all right and Katy was going to be all right. Terry said that she couldn't help but hold a grudge against her neighbor because she loved her neighbor. They were like sisters. But she was so mad that the neighbor had lied about her daughter being okay, so she held a grudge against her neighbor for that.
Wow.
Brian McCarthy was immediately charged with second-degree murder. And the reason it wasn't first-degree murder was because in New York at this time, that was only saved for cops that were killed and prison guards that were killed. So during this time, it's 80s, only prison guards and cops, if they were killed, only those who killed them could be charged with first-degree murder.
Okay.
I'm right there with you folks. Whatever.
The autopsy was done by Jefferson County Assistant Medical Examiner Jovan J. Kwan and Medical Examiner Virginian J. Allen. I know. Kwan noted there was several external injuries from her head, neck, shoulders, to her head, neck, and shoulders. Her face, and she had 2 black eyes, and her nose and jaw were swollen. There was a ton of defensive wounds, including a compound fracture on her index finger. If that tells you how hard she fought.
Wow.
She fought back. Her cause of death was actually ruled asphyxia due to manual asphyxiation. She had a fractured hyoid bone, which is a telltale sign that someone had been strangled. So the bone actually bends if pressure is put to one side of the head. It bends the other way. So the only way you can fracture that bone is if both sides have pressure on the neck. So let's say, because he does try to argue this, that he broke the hyoid bone by kicking her in the head. So if he kicked her head this way, the hyoid bone actually moves this way. So it moves the opposite of how your head goes. So the only way to fracture it is if both sides have pressure.
Okay.
Yeah. Another way they were able to tell she was strangled was by her brain. She had a bruise on the left frontal lobe, and her brain was in a state of neuronal necrosis. This essentially means the neurons had died due to lack of oxygen, typically done by strangling and depriving the brain of oxygen for an extended period of time. Once Katy passed away, the media went crazy as they usually do when someone dies. And apparently, the only person who wasn't guilty on Katy's death was Brian. The university, the guards, they were the ones to blame for the murder. Joe Sr. actually made a statement that said, "I have seen the newspapers today, and I have talked to Potsdam police. From the very first moment of this, I, her mother, and the rest of her family feel there is no fault with Clarkson University or the city of Potsdam. This is
How would the university? I mean, you
this
can't blame
was
the university or the security. I mean, and they weren't the ones committing murder. Now, what I would say is that the security needs to step it up a little bit.
well this was going to change. This was going to change. The president of Clarkson University and officials had come to the hospital and was comforting them and talked to them, so the family felt a lot of support from the university. Um, the family was just trying to get through it day by day. Joe Jr. was quoted saying, "We all retreated back to our corners." Her friends also were having to deal with the loss of her, and they were struggling with that loss. Katy's childhood friend actually wrote in the Syracuse Herald-Journal, "I've lost more than my best friend. I lost a part of myself. To all of Katy's friends, there is a bit of Katy in all of us. Let us follow in her example and enjoy our lives and enjoy them to the fullest. To Katy's family, be thankful for being blessed with such a nice person for 19 years. She loved you very much. I know she is in a much better place than this, and she deserves it."
Amen to that.
By September 4th, a lot of things were coming out about the murder and about Brian, and on that night of the murder. And then this is when a super bizarre story comes out. The guy drops off Brian, the driver, the hitchhiker, when he picked up the hitchhiker Brian.
Yeah.
A student named Thomas D. Rupert said they were hanging out outside a bar, and then they left. And when they were walking through the parking lot, a man just started yelling at them. A guy who had dark hair and a scruffy beard. And they yelled at him to shut up because they couldn't make out what he was saying. And then he approached them and he said, "I'm a police officer." And they went, "Yeah, right. You and your scruffy beard. You don't look like a police officer. Police officer, my butt."
Yeah.
They said, "Show me your badge." And he wouldn't. And he said if they moved a muscle, he would blow them away with his gun. And he reached for his back like he had one. I don't recommend doing this. But they went. They were like, "Oh, you have a gun? Yeah, right. I'm sure you have a gun. Don't do this. Sometimes people actually have guns."
Don't
Mostly
taunt.
the sick psycho ones.
Don't taunt.
And then he admitted he didn't have a gun. He then told him he was Brian McCarthy and showed him his license. He said he was working with state troopers and they had sniper rifles on the students, and he was paid $200 to watch them. And they went, "That's not true." And he was like, "Yeah, you're right. That's not true." He said, "I feel bad. Want me to buy you a drink or a cigarette or some weed?" And, college kids seeing an option for free beer went, "You can buy us a beer."
Yeah. Oh, there's beer in there?
So at this point, because Katy had passed away, it actually meant a lengthier trial and hearing and everything to start off the process. So September 5th, they had a preliminary hearing to see if they were going to hold him in jail, or while the grand jury was deliberating on the charges.
They were debating on
So
whether or not they were going to hold sick psycho man
in jail
in jail or let him be free until this comes up.
until they actually start the trial. Yes, that is
Come
that
on, judicial system.
that
Please tell me he did not.
that is everyone's right. No, he does not. I will tell you that much.
Ooh.
So the security guards had to testify, and they said it was definitely Brian they saw on Katy. And McKendry, who was in the room when Brian confessed, was giving his testimony when he was cut short because Brian's defense lawyer, Charles Nash, wanted media to be removed from the courtroom because there is always a chance that a confession could be inadmissible, and there was a chance they didn't want the media to have it publish parts of it because it might potentially taint a jury pool. if it is thrown out. So basically he was like, you can't let media have testimony of his confession because there might be clips released. And if there are clips released, when we do a jury trial, we might not be able to get a good pool of jurors because they've heard the confession and they'll think he's guilty no matter what. The judge agreed, and she had a psychological evaluation done, and she ruled that Brian would have to stay in jail until the official hearing. He was evaluated, and they just found out he had a really high IQ, but he was not insane.
Okay.
Bullshit.
Actually, a lot of these criminals have a high IQ. I don't know why you don't use your good high IQ for actually like good. Why don't you use your IQs for good? Why you gotta do it to a life of crime?
Because of that. They may be extremely, extremely intelligent, but something's wrong. It's that click where they're like, should I turn the light on or off? And they turn it off. And that's when it's on off. 6 cycles when it's on. Oh, I'm a PhD doctor, Superman type person like you thought he was.
Yeah. So Katie's family was actually kept out of the loop. And they were really upset by this. They wanted to make sure justice was served for Katie, but they also wanted to make sure none of this ever happened to another person again. They wanted to know their rights when it came to this. So Terry, Katie's mom, hired a lawyer, Joseph Fay and Christopher Wilde. Joseph Fay was actually well known for knowing a lot about the insanity defense. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to see if he can do the insanity defense. And they went to Potsdam, and he talked to Peretta. And Peretta basically said, no, you can't read this case file. I'm not allowing you to do that at all. Here, this case file, yeah, you're definitely not allowed to read it. And then he left the room with the case file in front of him. So
I'm just gonna leave this right here. Don't read it, but I'm gonna put it right here. Just don't touch it. You can't read it.
Exactly.
You mean we can't
Don't touch that.
That one.
So basically, Joseph Fay and Christopher Wilde said there was no way he could get an insanity defense. Because he made great efforts to lie about it after he committed the crime. Because of the lies he told, there was no way he could say he was insane at the moment of it happening. And the lawyers actually said, you should sue McCarthy for wrongful death, but you should also sue the university for the security guards and the negligence. And you can use this to make changes to the university to help people. Clarkson University said they were doing everything in their power to keep students safe, but Alan Clark, the president, also claimed it was a safe campus. So they were saying we're doing everything we can to make it a safer campus, but it's already a safe campus.
Okay, apparently.
I can understand. No, but I can understand safe campuses. They're trying their best to make sure that it's. But you never know when Timbuktu here.
Well, we're gonna get how that backfired. Because after Katie's murder, there was another sexual assault at a toga party. And that's when they finally decided to add more lights outside to the campus. And they finally decided not to give the security guards two-way radios, but radios that they could reach the police with, so that they wouldn't have to search for a phone. And then at this time, they also held 2 forums, one on the university and one in Syracuse, and people could talk and air their grievances.
Oh, Syracuse area. Beautiful.
So the president, Alan Clark, invited Terry and her lawyers to this forum in Syracuse. I'm about to tell you the most irritating and aggravating thing in the world. And said Clarkson was safe. And said the attack on Katy was only because Katy had put herself in her position by walking alone at 3:30.
What?
3:30 a.m.
Man, if I was the father of that daughter and you said that to me, your face would be meeting my fist. Wow, what an asshole! Comment.
So he invited her mom just to say that it was Katie's fault for getting killed.
Wow. No.
Who said that?
The president of the university at the time.
And hopefully he was let go the next day.
No.
Wow.
Well, here it gets better. Terry heard this and said, "Yep, we're suing the university."
Good.
She
Good for
wasn't
the mom.
originally going to sue the university, but then she was like, "You know what? Yeah,
Hell yeah.
we're suing now."
100% backing you on that, Mom.
Wow. Oh, it's a safe
Wow.
campus, but then my daughter was murdered. Oh, that's because that was her fault because of who she was and that she put herself out
She was
there.
walking by herself. How many of us walk by ourselves?
She wasn't
I know all
walking
the
by
damn
herself.
time.
She wasn't walking by herself. She
That's
was walking
true.
with a friend.
And
But then
then
the
she
friend-
got to campus and she was like, "It's a safe campus. I'll be fine."
Yeah.
Because they had promised her a safe campus.
So that's not on her. That's on you, Mr. President Asswipe.
Oh, this is an ass. Why?
So the lawsuit said that they had knowingly hired untrained security guards and they didn't add to their training.
Jeez.
They knew people were taking that shortcut and it was not properly lit. And there was no security measures.
Is there a fence around this campus?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, there was
Because
a fence.
normally if there's like a fence around the campus, usually there's gates where nobody can make that shortcut. And if they didn't have the gates, they should have had gates.
No, they had it, but it was an unlocked gate. It was like a gate that
And
anyone
after
could
a
walk
certain
through.
time, you should lock it. After 6, you lock the gate. You give every one of the people that's on campus that's a student a key.
So remember how I said the lawyers in this case are the monsters? I'm about to tell you another monstrous thing. The university's insurance and defense team responded with Katie's injuries and death were caused by Brian McCarthy, and it was not the university's fault. It was actually Brian McCarthy's for killing her, and Katie's fault because she engaged in culpa conduct. And they said the unit. So she basically, because of her own actions, she had put herself in a position of
Okay. That's 100% bullshit, ladies. Don't ever. I mean, oh, well, I stood there and let him grab me by the throat and smash my head up against the... But she put herself there. What the hell?
That's not it. That is not the worst of it. She had to get engaged in culpable conduct, so she had put herself in that position. They then said the university shouldn't have to pay for pain and suffering because Katie was unconscious for most of the attack.
Oh my God. Let's stab her a few times too while we're at it.
Oh my God.
Jeez almighty.
You gonna pay for these people's therapy?
Jeez almighty. And that came out of a same
Why
person.
do you keep the juicy crap at the end?
And that came out of the same person.
I'm sitting here trying not to go to sleep because I'm just like, when's the good stuff coming? Oh my God. What is wrong? And these were the attorneys?
These were the attorneys of the university.
You're fired. You're
Oh
fired.
no, this was like the A-team defense team.
No, I don't care. You're fired. You're
the
fired.
A-team defense team acting like a D-rated. Wow.
So during this, they actually found out the president of the university had interviewed the guards without anyone knowing, and there was recordings of it, but the defense refused to hand it over. Finally,
You're fired too.
Finally, they were able to get the tapes, and it proved there was a lot of negligence on the university's thing, and that the university was pretending there was a lot of extra lighting in the areas, and was basically saying, when you're interviewed, tell them there's extra lighting in this area. Yeah.
When there wasn't.
When there wasn't. So finally we get back to Brian McCarthy. Brian McCarthy was indicted on 3 murder counts and he pled not guilty.
Of course he would, because he didn't do it.
And there was
he only punched her a few times and smashed her head in a wall.
And there were 3 because
and he didn't see anything, but he seen 2 girls. But yeah, of course he ain't guilty.
What were they wearing?
A black jacket.
What? And he ran to her.
So it was actually 3.
He sprung into action.
It was 3 because they weren't able to determine specifics on the essay. So there was a charge for murder, a charge for strangulation while sexual assault, and there was another for strangling while attempting to essay her.
Now, please understand, we are not laughing at the young lady that this happened.
We're laughing
No,
at
we're laughing at the idiocy.
Jackass that had the audacity to do this to this poor woman.
And then deny every bit of it.
Yeah. And also how the school is now saying, well,
we're not going to pay for their suffering. Oh, Lord.
Because she was unconscious.
Yeah.
Do you see why I was getting so
Because
angry?
they were there.
It happened on your campus, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Your campus that you promised this young lady that it was safe. Your campus.
Yeah.
And then you hire people that were incompetent in doing their job. Second, no, you get
Yeah.
a big fat no.
No.
Yeah. So the sentences for any of these three were 25 years to life.
Hope we got the life.
So his defense team had demanded any information that Katy had any consensual sex with anyone in 48 hours before her murder.
What the
What does that have to
does
do with
that
it?
have to do with this guy
So
beating the living crap out of him?
so I will say there are things preventing this now, but back then there were no such protections. And this was because they wanted to make Katy seem promiscuous, so they wanted to make it seem as if she had asked for
Thank
it.
you, Thomas.
Am I saying he 100%? That was a little while ago.
So the defense team said Brian didn't kill Katy. The doctors did when they pulled the plug. Remember, they figured he would say this, so there was evidence that this wasn't the case. He tried to say the doctors intentionally pulled her plug too.
Oh yes, let me go over here. Hey, watch this, folks. Beep.
So during
Don't
this
worry, she's
time,
brain dead.
his
Poor
lawyer Nash and McCarthy
Nashing.
and McCarthy were able to see graphic photos taken of the crime scene and a nude photo of her on the autopsy table in a private room.
Okay, first off, disrespectful right there. The young lady is no longer here. She cannot defend herself in any way, shape, or form. You have no right to take an inappropriate, and I'm saying inappropriate, photo of her while she is on the autopsy table.
Yeah.
And if it's a full-on photo, you sick.
Her family actually didn't know about that until much later.
You're sick.
Wow.
The judge said no, Brian killed her, not the doctors. And though they were allowed to know about any sexual partners 48 hours before the crime, luckily there was none.
Oh, I saw Brian. Were you hoping for that? Did that happen?
There was a suppression hearing because he was forced into a confession, he was saying, and he didn't know his rights, which is totally untrue because he had been arrested a crap ton.
So every time you get arrested, dude, they tell you your rights.
Exactly. His lawyer said I could say that he was drunk or drugged and he didn't know his rights. That was the defense. So the defense lawyer got a bunch of people to get on the stand and basically say he was an alcoholic and just a crappy person
Which
in
was
general.
one person that picked him up that said he was drunk. One.
He had his friend Joe Lopez, and he said he saw Brian drink 3 beers and he didn't see him do any drugs. He said they did get into a fight, but he wasn't drunk or high when he got into that fight. The guy who picked him up said he thought Brian could be high, but not drunk. He smelled like liquor, but he just seemed real spacey in general. Charles Gardner, the DA, said a plea deal would be the best option to avoid acquittal. The family agreed as long as he got the 25 to life sentence. All while this was happening, they were fighting to suppress the confession that Brian gave. And it was actually not suppressed because they couldn't find cause to suppress it. Because while they were trying to say he was drunk and high, when he gave his confession, everybody was like, yeah, he wasn't drunk. And he may have been high, but I don't think he was. He was just real spacey.
So it backfired on his attorney then by trying to get all these witnesses.
President Clark was eventually asked to step down.
You think?
Because there was another SA on campus that happened after Katy. But also apparently there was other cases that they were covering up sexual abuse on campus with various different people.
Shame on them.
My
God.
Dude, you let all this stuff happen on your campus. Did nothing.
He eventually stepped down. So they ruled. So this is like while they're ruling the confession.
Step down, or did they make
probably
forced resignation?
So while all of this was going on,
she's dreaming.
So while they're ruling on the case, right?
It's all right, Hermione.
So while they're ruling on the case on his confession and if it can be suppressed, the president steps down. So back to the confession was found to be able to be used. So to admit he killed Katy. And there was 2 options. He could either plead the insanity plea or plead guilty. And there was no way he was going to win with the insanity plea, so he decided to plead guilty.
No, oh surprise!
8 days later, he pled guilty to second-degree murder, and the charge would be he committed murder while attempting an SA because he couldn't admit that he had SA'd her. He wouldn't have to admit. He would have to admit, um, saying that it wasn't his intention to kill her. So he had to confess a second time in front of the judge.
Wasn't his intentions to kill her,
But you
but
did.
yet bashed her head so many times she was unrecognizable, smashed her face in, black eyes, body wounds, took most of her clothes off of her, but
So he confessed a second time, and he said he stumbled upon Katy and that he was going to essay her. But instead, he decided to help her because she was bleeding and undressed. I tried to pick her up and throw her over my shoulder, but I couldn't stand up that well. And it seemed like she was fighting me. She didn't want any help. Any person's natural reaction to when someone rejects help is to say to hell with them, and that's what I said, and I threw her. And when they asked, "You threw her into the wall," he said, "Not with the intention of throwing her into the wall." Then she said, then he said, "I couldn't tell if her head or face hit the wall." The problem is he said this in front of a judge, and the judge determines if he understands what he's pleading to, or if he possibly doesn't understand to what he's pleading to. So basically, a judge can say he doesn't understand what he's pleading to, he can't plead guilty. So he has to admit it in front of a judge. And he did not admit it in front of a judge.
Oh, wow.
So it took several times, right? Before the judge would say, "I can't let you plead guilty unless you admit to what you did." It actually took several times in a recess, and everyone was telling him, "You need to admit it." And they finally got him to admit it, but it was really close. He was sentenced on September 11th in 1987. Carrie's lawyer put in a plea to the judge to allow statements on this day, essentially victim impact statements, and the judge denied it. He rejected it because he didn't want outbursts in his court. And when the lawyer tried again and wrote the statements that the family would give, so they could say their piece to Brian, the lawyer also wrote, "Someone who has contributed nothing to the world callously and viciously took the life of one who contributed much and is incapable of doing so much more."
outstanding judge.
Lawyer. And then the request again was denied by the judge.
Nice.
So the judge refused to let the family give their impact statements.
Well, that sucks. Sorry, I said nice. That sucks because they should have been able to.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a closure for the family to be able to say what they would really
Yeah.
like to say to that person.
The judge did, when giving his sentence, did mention the impact of Katie's attack on her family and his history of violence. He then said the family has asked for life sentencing, but also apparently a priest wrote that there should be leniency on Brian. I'm just, why?
What?
The judge,
was possessed by the devil.
a judge then read a letter that McCarthy wrote. So he wouldn't let the family read their victim statements, but he read a letter that McCarthy wrote.
Okay.
And I'm not going to tell you what the letter says. I'm going to give you the summary of what the letter says.
Okay.
And the summary is, he complains that his rights were infringed on and that he knew he was going to be forgiven by the Lord, and that's all that matters.
Okay. I'm a very religious person. I will say religious because I believe in Jesus Christ, but I don't go to churches. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm just saying that not religious, faithful person.
There you go.
Sorry, that's what I meant to say. My faith has brought me to where I believe in Jesus Christ and He is my Savior. For them or for him to say that, it's really hard because as a Christian, we are to forgive and to forgive those who have wronged us or done bad to us. But to sit there in court and say, "Oh, I did this, but I'll be forgiven because that's how my Lord is." To me, that's blasphemy. When you sit there and you say, if I were to go out and hurt or murder someone and then say, "Oh well, I'll be forgiven because God, Jesus is my God." Really?
Well, it gets.
You know, I look at it this way: no matter the sin, and I know I'm not trying to push religion on anyone, but no matter the sin, our Lord does forgive us if we ask for it, and it's in a sincere way. Okay. But murdering someone, you know, it's part of the 12 commandments. Thou shalt not murder.
Thou
You
shalt
know,
not kill.
or kill.
Mhm.
Thank you, Michelle. Sorry. I don't know. I'm just rambling. Go ahead. Amelia.
He also said he would give his own life for Katie's resurrection.
What?
Liar. Come
So
on.
Nash again tried for leniency, and he really fought for parole for McCarthy. The judge said, "Whatever is imposed will and cannot make whole the friends and family of Miss Hawelka. That relief is beyond this life. You will, however, long that you do live, have the burden of this incident forever with you, as well as I'm sure, as well as anyone who is associated with Miss Hawelka. It is the judgment of the court that you will
Yeah.
be
Rest in
sentenced
hell.
to an indeterminate sentence of imprisonment, which shall have a maximum term remaining term of your natural life.
Thank God.
The court hereby imposes a minimum imprisonment of 23 years. He took 2 years off of the sentence because he had time served. So basically, that means he served 23 years and he was up for parole in 2009.
Please tell me he did not get it.
He immediately began serving time in Clinton Correction Facility in Dana Morris, and he was transferred to Attica in 1987. And he started receiving disciplinary actions, and it was a constant. They found a shank in his bed, and he had repeatedly slammed a prisoner's face in the wall. In
Slammed it against the wall.
In 1992, he was transferred back to his original prison in Dana Morris. Then, in 1996, because of disciplinary actions again, he was transferred to Auburn Correctional Facility, a maximum security prison. In 2000, he was transferred again to Wendy Correctional Facility. You guessed it, because of disciplinary actions.
You seeing it? You
There-
seeing the timeline? You seeing?
There is a
something
thing
here?
called an electric chair
In 2000,
and lethal injection.
Depending on the state.
In 2003, he was transferred to Cape Vincent Correctional Facility. In 2005, moved to Orleans Correctional Facility. And 2007, he was moved to Livingston Correctional Facility.
Why
all
was he
because
moved all
of
these times?
because of
His-
disciplinary
yeah.
actions.
But even so, I'm gonna be bad, so I get moved. I'm gonna
Well-
be bad, so I can get
well,
moved.
here they added a
Leave
note.
him there.
Listen,
Let him rot.
listen.
They added a note to his file. When he was transferred to Livingston, there was a note on his file that said he was out of control and he should not be imprisoned with other inmates.
So they had to put him in, like.
Solitary confinement.
Yep.
He was transferred to Midstate Correctional Facility when he had his first parole hearing in 2009. Now, Katie's family made a petition, wrote letters saying don't release him. Clarkson University, under new management, also wrote a letter saying don't release him to the parole board.
Oh, good job.
They basically said for the safety of our students and everyone else, he needs to stay locked up.
Good.
Joe Jr. said, "This is my job now. I need to make sure he stays behind bars." Joe Jr. said there wasn't much I could do for those couple of days she was alive, but this I could do for her.
Mm-hmm.
Each time they do the most to keep him behind bars. They always send in photos, and they also write all new statements every time they go in front of the parole board, because he gets up for parole every 24 months.
So every 2 years.
Every 2 years he goes up for parole.
How old is the guy now?
He was like 23 when he was in his 20s when he committed the murder search.
So
So
he's
40. He's
kinda
like in
like
his
my age.
50s, 60s.
Yeah, he's my
Okay.
age.
They have to do this to keep a man who is literally kept from other inmates because he's unmanageable behind bars. So because even though he's unmanageable behind bars, they're like, he can go up for parole.
Until Bubba meets him.
Okay, so put him in a psych ward.
Well, so we're going to start talking about some of his statements in 2009, and it's going to be the most aggravating. So this is his parole hearing.
Mhm.
In 2009, at his parole hearing, he said that Katie was on campus going home, and I was going to meet friends on the other side of campus, and I was inebriated, and she was inebriated, and she asked me if I wanted to partake in sex, and I tried, but I couldn't, and she got mad, and she spit in my face, and it made me angry. This is him trying to get parole.
Yeah. Quit lying. Oh my. Oh, but I'll go to heaven because God will forgive me. Quit. Oh my
The
God.
board was shocked. They asked, "Did you know her?" Because they were so shocked by this, and he said, "I met her once or twice.
When he
I
flew in as a superhero.
I knew her from a bar, and we went to a hockey game together." The board then said, "You didn't accompany her to a bar or hockey game, did you?" And he said, "I did, to the hockey game." And they said, "When did this happen?" He said, "It when did this happen?" He said, "It was not really a date. We were just sitting close to each other, and we were interested in the same teams."
Oh.
Um,
So
they
when you go and watch hockey, if it's a girl sitting about 6 chairs away from you, you're on a date.
well, they go, "Who acquired the seats,
So
and
he said it wasn't a date.
how did they get so close?" And he said, "I know someone who works for the college, and they got me seats and utilized them." And they go, "So how did she get that seat?" And he said, that somebody had given that they had given him 4 seats, and the 2 people that were supposed to go with him and Katy. Sorry. The 2 people who were supposed to go with him and Katy, they dropped out. So the 2 of them went to the hockey game by themselves. So none of this happened. None of this happened.
Obviously.
Maybe
When
it's
one of the
an
parole
imagination.
board said, "Explain it to me because it doesn't make sense," that's when he gave the 4 ticket story, and they couldn't make sense of it because of how back and forth it was.
Wow.
Her roommate said that McCarthy was someone they had never met. All of Katie's friends, family, they all went, "We've never met this man before in our lives."
Wow.
Um, they asked him one more night about the night of the crime, and he said he couldn't remember anything.
Of course not.
And then he was asked, "What is the one thing you remember from that night?" And he said, "Striking Kathy Walker."
Striking her.
Walker. Who's Walker?
Well, we're going to go to 2011.
Who's Kathy Walker?
His parole board was denied, stating he had limited insight on the crime and there was no remorse for the crime that was committed.
Okay.
And any of what was shown was to get sympathy points from the panel.
And if any of you, and I can't sit there and say you can't, but if you feel sympathy, thank you, for this guy, you also might want to go and get checked. I mean, what the hell?
In 2011, he did the same story, but he said the medical examiner was wrong and she was killed because of how she hit the ground. And he didn't strangle her, and he kept referencing one of the security guards, Kim Avedikian. And the parole board was confused about how he was talking about the security guard and said,
And came up with the name
do you know who that is? And when he was talking about Kim Avedikian, they realized he was trying to talk about Katy. When he said striking Kathy Walker, he didn't even know Katy's name.
Oh, wow.
He has access to his own file. He never knew Katy's own name.
Well, Katy,
How do you not
I
know
hope
her
you're
name?
enjoying heaven, because that's where you
I guess
obviously
a lot
were.
of psychopaths really don't care to know their
25 years in.
victims' names.
Well, no, there's serial killers who can list you off who they
And
killed
where they dumped them.
and where they dumped them, and they have
everything.
all of that.
and there's
And
some that don't.
sometimes you look
Sure,
at them and
you're
you're like keep their names out of your mouth. I don't want you to say their names. But the fact that he's like, I don't even know her name. 25 years.
What scares me is, did this guy, yes, he got caught for this, but did he ever do this to someone else? The world will never know, ever.
That parole was denied. And at one of his most recent parole hearings, his own family actually wrote a letter saying he needs to be kept behind bars. And they have all severed ties to him, and they apologized to Hawelka's family.
Wow. I mean,
Both
kudos to his family for doing what they did, because yes, he has done a horrendous act, and you want to stick by that family member to show your support to them, that hopefully things turn around for them. But for them to now sever, that sucks for him.
Yeah.
No,
I know, but I'm saying it sucks for him because now he knows I don't have that support no more. I don't have family to come sit there and see how I'm doing and all this bullcrap, because he did this shit to himself.
Clarkson University decided to settle. So he's in prison. It's now come to the university has decided to settle. And the only way that Terry's family would Terry would allow them to settle was if they publicly apologized for blaming Katy on her own death, promised to beef up
Good for them.
security and admit to negligence, and also agree to a financial settlement. And they agreed. They did all of this.
Wow.
Good.
They publicly apologized for Katy doing that. They did
But
try
they
to
should have made the president that said those nasty words
apologize.
apologize.
They did try to distance it from being their fault when they did the apology, but they did apologize for what was said. But Terry also kept trying to make changes in the world. She kept making changes to universities, but she also joined victim advocacy groups to help victims or family of victims.
Good for you,
Good
Terry.
for her.
And especially how victims and their families were treated in the judicial section. She also lobbied that universities should show and give their crime rates to all upcoming students. So the reason now,
that's a smart idea.
Post it somewhere.
well, yeah, so now all universities, it passed. All universities now have to give their crime rates and crime statistics to all upcoming students. It has to be easily accessible.
Wow.
Awesome.
And then that way it's the choice of the student. Well, I don't want to go here because of this.
And then basically Katy's family got even closer. More than they were before. And they actually said that they've had spiritual encounters with Katy's spirit.
Oh, nice.
They say her photo will fall off the mantle for no reason, and strange things will happen around her photo specifically.
Aw.
She's still there in spirit. She loves her family, and her family loves her so much. You know, what an incredible bond. I mean, it has nothing to do with this, but my sister passed, and it was incredibly hard for our entire family. But we know in spirit she has definitely visited my brother, her son, her daughter, in her own way. And that's such a wonderful feeling, knowing that even though she went through such a horrific and horrible death, she has a family who loves her, who has supported her,
and is still fighting.
For her.
Because basically the parole board has to read everything that is given to them. So that's why they rewrite new statement letters, is so that the parole board never gets tired of hearing about Katy. They always send photos. They always write. They always do all of that. So I want to talk also about her dad. So Joe Sr. was diagnosed with John Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he survived. But in August 10th in 2007, so before the parole hearings began, he passed away. He died at the age of 67.
And the wonderful, not what that's wonderful, but is now he's with his
Katy,
daughter, and they get to see this because their
mom's still fighting.
Yeah. Terry said that she wanted to keep Katy's story alive, and she wants to make sure that she is remembered. And that's why she's very vocal. Her whole family is very vocal about all of it. He still goes up for parole every 2 years. And so the last time he was on parole was June 2025. They had to put off his parole for 3 months. So in April of 2025, he is actually up for parole. There is a petition you guys can sign. I think right now it's at 60,000 people who have signed it, asking that he stay in prison. I know in 2021 and in 2023 there was more BS he tried to pull. There is a book that was written about those encounters, and there's actually a book written about Katy's murder. And it's actually a really good source if you're ever interested in it.
I also want to say thank you, Abigail and Michelle, for. I mean, I know Abigail did most of the research on this, but
you mean most? She did all of it.
Okay, she did all of it. But to bring this to people's attention and explain to people the horrors of this kind of stuff, because there's so many people out there that need help, whether they're the victim or the person that causes this. And if you feel that you are someone who's a victim or someone who is losing control, there's ways to get help.
We posted it in the last video of
and
SA
please do
and
that. You know?
suicide. We did the phone number in the last.
So
Last
William
one.
DeRule wrote a book called A Stranger Killed Katy.
Ugh.
And basically, if you want to read more about how close the family is, he has all of that in his book. He also has all of the interviews. He has them all typed up. He has everything, like you can actually read it word for word what is said and not just summaries.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also has another book, and I didn't get to read the book or do anything with the book, but it's called The Long Shadow of Katy's Killer. And this book covers the BS that Brian McCarthy tried to pull in 2021 and 2023 with his parole hearings.
Yeah.
Because I'm not exactly sure what happened with those, but apparently he tried to pull some BS with that. He is up again for parole this year in April of 2025. There is a Facebook group to follow Katy Hawelka's family and their fight for this. They've posted that his 8th hearing is in 2025.
So, but is it in April or is it in June?
April.
It's in April.
Last year, the last time he went up for parole, it did not happen until June of 2023.
Okay.
I don't know the reasons for that, why it was held 3 months, but it went back to its normal 24 cycle. So it was 21 months before he was put on parole.
Okay.
So Brian McCarthy is just a monster, and he hasn't changed in prison. I don't understand how when he bashed that prisoner's head in the wall, when he has so many disciplinary actions, how is he even able to get parole?
Yeah. Right there? It should be like, no, all these disciplinary actions, you don't deserve parole.
You haven't changed at all.
Yeah, you haven't shown anything. Even when they say he hasn't shown remorse for what he's done, to me, you show no remorse. You shouldn't be allowed to be able to get parole in the first place. Should have been 25 to life with no chance of parole. That's it.
Yeah, and just the fact that the judge was like, "Oh, we'll give you 23 years." I feel like the judicial system failed Katy's family.
Mm-hmm.
And Katy's family is trying to find ways so it doesn't fail for others, and it's not failing for Katy still.
And kudos to the parents and now mom, and siblings taking it upon themselves to continue to fight for their loved one. That was mine. You can have one.
But yeah,
you can have one roll. I have another one in there.
But yeah, the fighting for Katy is something that is honestly the sweetest thing I've heard. Just how Joe Jr. is like, we were treated to our corners. We weren't real close at that time when the murder first happened, but then now they're closer than ever.
Mm-hmm.
They're fighting together.
It brings you a lot closer together when something that tragic happens.
And in some cases, it tears families apart, but it just made this one stronger. And this family has always been strong.
Mm-hmm. Since the very beginning.
Katy, the reason I talked about Katy's life first, is because I wanted you to get to know Katy. Katy was wanting to make groundbreaking work in the world, saying women belonged in higher education. She was making a difference.
Yeah.
And her life was taken away way too suddenly.
Yeah.
And by a man who can't even admit to what he did. He's still lying to this day. He is still lying.
He's believing what his brain tells him to say.
Yeah.
They always say, and I think it's a psychological thing. They always say that when you tell the story more than once, no, it's not that. It's not when you constantly lie and lie and lie. It's more or less when you sit there and you continuously say the same story over and over again. Besides the fact him changing it, you start believing it yourself.
Yeah, and Brian McCarthy he could never tell the truth about it. Just the way he was so smug when asking about how's the girl. And the fact, I fully believe Brian McCarthy, the fact that he had assaulted the brother of the girl, the 16-year-old, and broke his jaw. He had done it a month prior to another gentleman and almost beat him to death. but there were no charges
And then
brought
does
in that case.
And then does it in prison?
And then he
Smashing a
does it in-
dude's face in the wall?
He obviously should not. And again, there is a note on his file stating he should not be with regular inmates. He is unmanageable. And you want to release someone who is unmanageable to the public? If Katie's family was not fighting as hard as they were to keep him in prison,
He'd be walking the same
he
streets
would
as
be
us.
walking the same streets as us, which is a terrifying thought in my mind. Because you
Mhm.
don't think he would do it again? He only got 23 years last time.
Yeah. I mean,
What's
don't know.
another 23 to him? He's already done it.
Oh, it's really kind of questionable. Sorry, I took your spot
All right.
because I was feeling
Squished.
squished.
But yeah, no, just this case I wanted to talk about because, like last time, how we talked about the victims who were kind of overseen by the Bayou Strangler, how society didn't want to see them as victims because they were high risk. Katie was the literal definition of low risk.
Yeah.
She was the living breath. The only thing that potentially made her high risk was she was young.
Yep.
She was well known and
age.
well liked in the community. She didn't do drugs. Yeah, she had a couple of drinks, but she was not an alcoholic. She had a home. She was really close to her family. And they still found a way to blame her. Multiple people found ways to say it was her fault. The university president, oh, it's her fault. She walked by herself. Oh, Brian, she was drunk and using the wall to hold himself up. The lawyer saying, "Oh, she engaged in culpable action because she walked alone by herself." And did she even suffer because she was unconscious for most of it?
That still baffles me. Like,
Yeah.
what is wrong with? Did she suffer? Okay, let me beat you up like that, and let me do that to you, and then you're knocked out, and then wake up and say, "Did you feel anything?"
And the fact that even though she was dead, her photo was shown to her killer, who was on trial for almost essaying her. Her photo was shown to him. A nude photo was shown to him in a private room with his lawyer. That is so
Inappropriate,
inappropriate, and that is
disrespectful, degrading,
exactly. It is awful
And
to
not
think of.
only
demoralizing.
did he say he didn't essay her, he did. I mean, was that proven or not proven?
They never said if it was proven or not
Because they
proven.
didn't do a kit.
Because honestly, at that point, her body was so badly beaten that they were like, "There's no point in doing this."
Which they should have done it anyways. He gives a rat's ass. I mean, come on.
And again, that's why
They
there
should have
was
done
the
it.
two charges: the one saying with SA and with attempted SA. It was.
Hmm.
It is just a really sad case, and a case that I think a lot of people need to hear because, hey, this was in the 80s. We
Mhm.
should have come a lot farther now.
Mhm.
But how many times have we heard on college campuses? I know I heard on college campuses if something happened to somebody. Oh, well, she was walking by herself.
Well, and then now, when you were going to college, Michelle, didn't they have campus alerts? And if you went to that college, they would actually alert you by your phone. Am I right?
Yes, they do that. Well, that's like for anything that's going on, like an active shooter
Hmm.
or somebody else.
They have,
Uh,
yeah, Pima has this even for the online
if you
students.
if you need help. What? Why can't we? Aw, thanks, Thomas.
Thomas rules.
Well, Thomas said this is why when I'm at work, if you need help, call me. He'll come over and help, which really appreciate that. That means a lot.
But like I was a university student at the U of A, right? And I walked around the U of A, and getting to the U of A is difficult sometimes, right? I also worked in a kitchen that served the football team, and we would be open super late at night for the football team. They would finish their training at like 10 o'clock at night,
And then we need food.
and so yeah, they would be like, "We need food." It would only take them 30 minutes to eat, but it would take us an hour to clean the kitchen. So I'd get off around 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and I would have to walk the campus by myself.
Yeah.
I didn't have any close friends at the U of A, so I'd have to walk the campus by myself, and I didn't want to walk them like long way. It made sense for Katie to take a shortcut if she wanted to go home quickly.
Yeah.
I took shortcuts.
Yeah.
So and I know I would sit there and I'd be like, if something were to happen to me, I know exactly what would be said. I was walking a shortcut. I
Yeah.
was by myself.
Yeah.
And so our society, and I hate to say it, we've come a long way. We've had like the little emergency lines, but we can't have nice things. Do you know you have to press those 3 times in a row? You have to press one, then you have to run to another one, then you have to run to another one.
I think it's what they told us when we went to go do like a walkthrough of.
And do you know why that is? Is because they originally put it up that you would only have to call once.
Oh wow.
But there were prank callers who would run up to them and hit the emergency button. Call 911, trigger them to think there was an emergency. So they basically said, so now you have to run to 3 of them. I'm sorry. And I will say it on here, I am crippled. I can't run. My knees are bad. I am terrible. I run. I'm out for the count. I can't even reach 2 of those. But I have to press 3 before I can get somebody to help me in an emergency. That doesn't make sense to me. That is sad and upsetting.
I can run from our couch to the door. Then I'd be on the ground.
Exactly. And having to press 3 of them in a row. And at the U of A, they were so far spread out.
They still are.
Exactly. They're so far spread out that you have to keep that energy going to run those distances to press 3 in a row.
It's where women, we should carry whistles.
Yeah.
Carry yourself a whistle.
But that saddens me. Why should a woman have to do that? And I understand why, because we have psychos out there.
For the safety of us, if we feel like we're being followed and you can't get to a phone fast enough.
Exactly.
And if they come at you, you have to
we
carry
have a
something.
society that makes you feel that way, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, unfortunately, society is what put that in our heads.
Yeah.
That we have to protect ourselves one way or another.
It's like the discussion of the man versus the bear.
Hence why women go out. If you go out with other females.
And you go out with a group.
And go out with a group. Don't whistle, taser, or pepper spray. Heck yeah.
Exactly.
Give me a baseball bat. Carry that in my pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that'd be one heck of a pocket to carry a baseball bat.
I took softball. Should be able to whack them once.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
And if you need to know where you can get mace with super, super loud alarms, Walmart.
That's
show
a
you where they
small
are.
baseball, Thomas. Yeah, it'd be pretty small. It wouldn't fit in my pocket.
But yeah, no, it's just it's like the age old. It's like the question. I don't know if you guys saw the question where women were asked on the street, if you were alone in the woods, who would you pick? A strange man or a bear? What would you pick? And almost all women chose a bear.
Because you're snuggling.
Yeah, exactly. They were like, well, I know what's happening with if I leave a bear alone, a bear's going to leave me alone.
Yeah, true. Unless it's hungry.
But a lot of women responded with, I don't want to be alone in the woods with a strange man.
No, I wouldn't want to either. What the hell is he going to do?
Unless he looked like Henry Cavill.
Padlock the tent.
No.
I remember asking Justin, I was like, hey, what would you rather me be stuck with in the woods? A strange man or a bear? And he goes, neither, because you would go up to the bear and hug the bear. And you would try to cuddle with the bear and the bear would eat you. And then, it's a guy.
I would have to say I would go with the bear because, like you said, the bear would leave you alone if you don't mess with it, if you don't bother it.
Do you want to know what some of the arguments against women were saying the bear? The argument was, well, if I killed you, it would be a lot less painful than if you picked the bear.
Wrong. Wrong. A bear swinging at full speed with its paw and hitting you in the head is like being hit by an elephant running 5,000 miles an hour. There.
I mean, Katie's death is a perfect example. It would not be. It wouldn't be less painful. It can be painful.
But remember, according to him and them, that she was unconscious.
Oh yeah, she was unconscious.
That's still annoying.
And he flew to her rescue.
No, he didn't flew. He sprung into action.
He sprung. He ran to the stairwell, and then he ran to the dip of the school, and then he
there
turned
was
the
nobody
corner,
in the dip of the school,
and he kept hearing screaming. If he was hearing screaming, why weren't the security guards hearing screaming?
Thank you.
The security guard heard someone bang on the door, meaning Katy probably got away from him, banged on the door for help. The
and then
security
he got her back.
he
where
got
she
her
was at.
back, slammed her into the wall.
Mhm.
And he had to do it multiple times with a lot of force. If the blood was 7 feet tall, mind you, those of you who've met John, how tall are you?
I'm 6'2".
It was taller than John by a good couple. It was by what, 10 inches higher than him.
So think about that. That's hell force being. She was not just slammed; she was slammed
Yeah.
against that wall.
And
Like,
then the fact he was like, I wanted to shake her insides out. Who says that?
a psycho like him.
Hannibal Lecter.
A monster.
No, I don't think Hannibal Lecter ever said anything like that.
No, I'm just pointing out. I mean,
Hannibal Lecter was just.
no, I know who Hannibal Lecter
Yeah.
was. We'll get to him later. He's another one I'm kind of interested in. Kind of. Keyword kind of.
Mm.
Yep. So next week we are going to. Well, it's my turn. She gets a break.
I get a break. I get a little vacation.
I get to do 2 stories. I get to do 2 this month. So either the 13th or 14th. I'm going to do the one for the Murrah building, Oklahoma City bombing. I go, that one means a lot to me and is obviously very close to home because it happened in Oklahoma, where I am from. I was 15 when that took place, or fixing to turn 15. So that is something that I would like to talk about. And then I believe the week after that, 20th or 21st, gonna figure out the day, is gonna be Titanic, because this is also months of the sinking of the Titanic. So we had a lot going on this month.
It's crazy.
But just kind of giving a backstory of the Titanic and going over some things in the history of it. Mostly those 2 things are the history of it, because it is the anniversary coming up for both. The anniversary may have already passed for the Titanic, because I think it was earlier in the month, or it's the 12th. I don't remember. So when I do my research, we'll know. But I do know next week is going to be the Oklahoma City bombing, because that is on the 19th.
Mm-hmm.
So it was on the 19th. I can't remember the date. April 19th, 1995. Or I might swap it. I might do that on the 20th or 21st, because it'll be after the fact.
Yeah.
And then might do the Titanic. So, I mean, we'll let you guys know what we're going to do.
And then I'm thinking about doing the 28th
or
episode.
If you guys have any suggestions on
who
you'd like Abigail or Michelle to look into.
I'm telling you now, I want to do one on Lake Lanier. I want to do one on a spooky lake. Let me do an episode on a spooky lake, please.
Yeah, we want to get away from the murders right now.
Let me get a little break from murder.
And I will still bring you
gotta
baseball,
fix those
football,
blinds.
basketball, and many other things. Cards.
On Mondays.
Okay.
Well, we're trying to give you a date. This is what I was saying.
But I am wanting to talk about Lake Lanier, because Lake Lanier is a really interesting lake. Fun fact, I'll give you this little fun fact so you can see if you want to know. Everything in Lake Lanier is perfectly preserved because of the things inside the lake. Everything is perfectly preserved. So people are actually going in and like digging up
calcifying?
Kind of
Calcification?
Almost. Like even bodies that are there are perfectly preserved when they're down there. And the only reason that there's damage to some of the ships now is because people went in and dove and damaged them. So like diving in Lake Lanier, you have to have a specific license to dive, and you're not allowed to touch the stuff. Unless you're there for archaeological digging, which they are, and they are finding a lot of interesting things in the bottom of Lake Lanier.
But that will be on another episode of J&M Podcast.
A&M.
A&M Podcast. Coming to you live from
Arizona.
I
don't give out our location. I just say the state.
Yeah, so if you want to hear more about Lake Lanier, let me know. I will gladly do an episode on Lake Lanier.
Do a thumbs up in the comments below, because I get notifications when people comment.
And then also, I will start doing my research on Jack the Ripper, and we'll do Jack the Ripper. It is going to be a multi-episode, extra long kind of case.
I'm interested about Jack the Ripper as well.
And we're not just gonna learn about Jack the Ripper and his killings. I'm also going to discuss the victims, who the victims were, the circumstance of them, but also I'm going to give you the history of Whitechapel. Because I think when we think about the murders of Jack the Ripper, right, we're just like, he killed prostitutes. Okay. Not
There was more to that.
a lot of these women, a lot of the people in Whitechapel were just really, as much as I hate to say, a product of their circumstances. There was not a lot of getting out of it for them. They were
Stuck.
they were stuck, and there was no getting out for them.
Okay. I think we hit our 2-hour mark again.
Woo!
We're doing good. All right, guys. Gonna jump off here. We will see you next week. I will look and see which one I'm going to do first. I think it's probably going to be Titanic, since the bombing is not until the 19th, at least the anniversary for it. So I think Titanic is going to be the next one that I probably jump on and do and get some research. It may not be a very long subject about it, which is okay. But I can even tell you about my adventure going to Branson with my siblings. And see you tomorrow, Thomas. Feel better, bud. My experience going to Branson and actually going into the Titanic exhibit. And I'll see if I find some pictures and post the pictures too on our page. So it was fun. I can tell you that. It was a cool thing to see. But until then, we will see you guys next week. Love you all.
Bye.
Have a good evening. Have a great work week. And see those at work. All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.